In the dark sky on June 15th, a question is being born. The sun and the moon meet in Gemini, and this is the new moon. It's a beginning. So where most of life rewards the answer, this moon honors the question. The asking itself is a living thing, a seed with its own intelligence about where it wants to grow and what it wants to grow into. So we'll move through what this lunation is all about. Lilith standing directly across from it. She is the dark goddess in fire. And then I'll speak to what this new moon opens for you, for your rising sign specifically. So the new moon is the dark of the month. It's when the energy ebbs and sort of retreats. The moon is veiled and the sun of the moon and the moon meet in that darkness. And the field is cleared for what has not yet taken form. So it's a great time for us to consider what our intention is for the lunar month ahead. And what is seated in this dark grows with the waxing light. It has the characteristics of Gemini, an air sign, the twins, and ruled by Mercury, otherwise known as Hermes, the messenger, and the doubled mind. And Hermes is the only Olympian who moves freely between every world. He walks into the underworld and back. He carries messages between gods and mortals. And he stands at the crossroads and belongs to all directions at once. He governs doorways and portalways, places of transition and translation, also of exchange, the space between. And so this new moon is in the sign that he rules. It's in his domicile, his home turf. It has to do with language and communication and also attention. Gemini knows that to speak something is to actively change it, that all words are spells, and that the mind, when it's curious rather than just certain, which the mind really likes to be, this is one of, it's a great instrument of renewal. And this new moon has this magic of renewal. Now, the ruler is Mercury, and he's in Cancer, and this is a water sign, and every lunation has a ruler. So this is, again, where the moon is living, where the moon is a guest for now, and in the sign of Mercury, and they are in mutual reception. So that means that they can really speak to each other. And what they speak about is emotional intelligence. This makes this moon about the deep waters of feeling. The question this moon invites, it's not abstract. It's not like puzzles or clever reframings or, logos. Sometimes we think that logic and intelligence are synonymous. They mean the same thing, but they don't. Because feeling is a kind of intelligence. So the questions here rise from the heart and the heart's interior, and from memory, and from the felt sense of things, right? So those of you who have Mercury natally in Cancer, you kind of have these spidey senses where you can really tune into, sort of suss out what the feeling is, what's going on from the feeling in the room. All of us get to borrow this for this new moon and for the time that Mercury is in Cancer, right? So we get to experience emotional intelligence, or the invitation to develop that. So Mercury in Cancer kind of thinks the way that the tide thinks, if you will, by returning, by feeling its way along the shore, and by knowing things in the body before sometimes we have the words for them. So even though Mercury is about communication with language and words, we have body language also, and that's a form of communication. In fact, most of our communication between each other in real life is through our body language. So the curiosity of this new moon has a very sensitive and tender kind of root. And the question then arises from feeling. And Mercury is also in a harmonious aspect with Mars in Taurus. This is the feeling mind in easy conversation with steady and embodied action. So what's voiced from the heart can actually be made into manifestation. So it can be more grounded in action, and not in a way that's stressful, but in a way that is, again, harmonious and steady. And so the ideas also that we play with right now with the Gemini energy, there is that invitation to then take that as it develops and move slowly forward and deliberately into making it into something that is tangible. Now, directly across the sky from this new moon is Black Moon Lilith, and she's been a sustained presence this season. She was in the energy of the Sagittarius full moon that we had 2 weeks ago. She was there when across from the sun when we had the Venus-Jupiter conjunction a few days ago. So, and you can of course listen to the video about that to learn more about that, and maybe recognize if you've listened to it already, you might go back to listen and kind of retrospectively what happened for me at that time. But she now opposes the new moon as well. This is the dark goddess in the element of fire, and this is untamed truth that, again, we feel in the body. You know, she's kind of facing off with the new moon and asking questions that are maybe more challenging. Gemini might like to kind of move along the surface and keep accumulating information. I need more information. I'm just listening to one more podcast. I just need to scroll a little bit more. One more video, one more perspective. And Lilith says, what is true for you in your body? She also wants freedom. She wants to feel free. She doesn't want to be influenced by algorithms and superfluous information. She has no patience for borrowed inquiry. She's the knowing that lives in your magic, in the place in you that maybe we've exiled for some reason, or we have rejected, or we're worried will be rejected by other people for its intensity and for its heat. But Lilith is where the heat is and where the aliveness is. And that heat and aliveness is fueling the curiosity and helping to form the question that is in the seed. So she doesn't oppose the curiosity, she kind of purifies it. And she acts as a mirror. And what she reflects back is that the mind is most alive when it's in service to our untamed knowing, and is most lost when the mind chatters over that wildness. And that, when I say wildness, I don't mean just chaos and out of controlness. I mean your connection to all that animates, right? The word anima means soul. And what makes your soul come alive and expand. And so this new moon invites you into curiosity about that. What does make me feel that way? What does make me feel alive? What choices might I need to make now? Mercury's a god of crossroads. Gemini is associated with the lovers in the tarot, and that card has to do with choices. So what choices may need to be made now that could risk something, could risk belonging in some way, but also might expand you into something that's more aligned even if it's more polarizing. Polarization is what causes people to be attracted to you and also repelled. But that brings the right people who are really going to appreciate you. And it also situates you in your center of power. So as the moon seeds itself into the dark, let her have her say. Really be listening for it with curiosity and from your heart. Now, Venus, speaking of the heart, has changed signs just as this lunation comes into fruition. And she was, just a few days ago wrapped in Jupiter's embrace in the waters of Cancer, where Jupiter was exalted. And, these gifts came in, the blessings came in, or that seed was planted for that to grow. Right? Jupiter in Cancer is about growth in fertile ground. Now Venus has crossed into Leo, and the goddess of love is stepping out of the waters, out of the sea where she was born, and into firelight, into radiance. She's known as the sunlit goddess. So she is loving this golden light of Leo. She's in the domicile of the sun, which is in Gemini. So that circles us back to the Geminian energies and to Mercury. So she gets on her tiara and wants to be visible, and it's shiny and everything else. And as she moves into Leo, she's immediately in conversation with some very big powers. So she sextiles Uranus, who is a transpersonal planet, and he has to do with the collective consciousness and also change and innovation and new directions. She is desire, and she is in conversation with liberation and with love that frees rather than constrains in negative ways. And she's also in a trine with Neptune, another transpersonal planet. And so this brings this dreaminess into it, and poetry, as well as the aliveness of Uranus. And this brings in enchantment and romance, especially in Leo. This just has this real beauty to it, creativity. And again, as I say, poetry, self-expression. There's another aspect, though, that's very intense, and that's that she's in opposition to Pluto, who's in Aquarius. And this is a very charged meeting because oppositions are charged and dynamic, and they change us, and they also act as mirrors. So Aphrodite is facing the lord of the underworld across the sky. And so she's this radiant desire, sovereign, energy. And she's looking directly at power and intensity and transforming. And so this is desire, love and beauty meeting its own depths, which is kind of exciting. So what you love is asking you to be loved with more truth, in mystery, to love the mysteries also, not just what's sunlit and obvious and easy, but also the mystery of our beloved, like the things that we don't know, that we don't understand, and honor that as well. Love that up as well, not just what we can control about the other person, because that's the shadow side of Venus and Pluto, is control, obsession, circling around something or someone in a way that takes power away from us rather than empowering us. Yeah. But it draws you towards somewhere, the desire that emerges here, even when it's feels kind of like a lot, that might be challenging. It's still taking you someplace that has more depth, that's more alive, that's more exciting and interesting and complex. So Venus in Leo could easily get sort of surface and performy, not with Pluto here. So that's that reminder as Venus is moving into Leo. That's this way, sort of almost like a test or a portal way that she's moving through. That yes, of course, performance is fun. All the world's a stage. and to make sure that you're staying rooted in your depths and what is really true for you, because that's where the wealth is, and it's also where the sustenance and riches are, where the nourishment comes from the root, from the deep underground. So the invitation here, one of them, is to let your heart be sovereign and deep at once, to be open to the intensity, let it move through you, and not performing light or hiding in dark, or avoiding dark and staying in the light, or only going to the dark and just shadow working yourself to death and not ever, and just enjoying what what Venus in Leo brings. Pluto gives her beauty complexity and a contrary sort of nature to it, and deeper mystery that makes her even more beautiful. So we have Chiron in Aries. The final degree of the sign will move into Taurus next week. I will have a video for you about that. Thank you for the feedback asking for that video. So the wounded healer is finishing his long trajectory through the territory of identity and selfhood, and the wound of being yourself at all, just existing and feeling like on some level I don't have the right to exist. And so Chiron's been opening up the wounds around that and also healing those wounds. But as he's moving out of Aries, he's doing some stuff, right? So he's going to square Venus, he's squaring Jupiter, he's squaring Pluto. So this is the teacher, the mentor, the teacher that's been moving through this area, raising his voice one more time before he crosses that doorway, and that makes that ingress, making sure that the lesson has really been felt. So it can kind of intensify the Chiron and Ariesness on the way out, kind of almost like a sunset effect, like those colors are going to be bright on the way out. And so what he's asking of this new moon is to include the wound. So the questions that are planted in this dark will grow best in ground that has, that's really allowing for our wholeness, that includes all the hurts, and that includes what the years have cost, and which wounds have become wisdom, which ones still are asking for more attention, more tending, where we might be still avoiding. But he's not blocking anything. He's the old gardener standing at the gate, reminding you that the most fertile soil is the soil that has been turned, so that's not been neglected. So we're to honor what we've been taught. So now we're going to move into the rising signs and the special message that the moon in Gemini has for you. If you haven't already, please join me on my Patreon to support this work and to get your weekly podcast. You can join the Veil Walkers Grove community as well to work with me more closely, and we can work in mentorship one-on-one, in coaching, if you have specific areas of your life that you are wanting to progress in, you're just wanting to bring more magic into your life and you're not sure how. That's a great way to work with me. So the link for that is, of course, in the video description. And I so appreciate those of you who have subscribed. If you haven't done that already, I thank you for doing that now, if you would. We're going to move right into the rising signs. If you have Aries Rising, the new moon is in your 3rd house. This is voice, language, your immediate world. For you, Aries, your strength is initiation. And you speak first, you ask first, and you move toward what calls you without waiting for permission. And this is your magic. That's your superpower, is firstness. But you might be tempted sometimes to arrive at exchanges already armed with your conclusion, with forward moving force. But maybe for this moment, it might be the invitation is to receive something and to keep things sort of open. So the question opens here in conversation. It may bloom as a piece of writing that surprises you, So this is a great time to journal with an open mind and see what happens. You might read your own thing back and say, wow, I didn't know I actually thought that, or some new insight could come up. There could be conversation that changes you, or just a new fascination that pulls your fire in a direction that you weren't expecting. Yeah? Aries, the moon asks you, what would you say if you do not already know how the conversation ends? If you have Taurus rising, the new moon lands in your second house, and this is your resources, your finances, your self-worth, what you have, and also what sustains you. So your strength is your constancy. That's one of your strengths. You know how to hold, to tend, to remain, to bloom, to grow things and maintain them. Yeah? But the shadow can be the temptation to keep tending an old definition or security because it's familiar, and maybe something has stopped feeding you. So the question opens here in the territory of worth to kind of open things up again with curiosity. You know, what actually sustains your life as it is now? What are you ready to shift in terms of your finances? And what do you no longer need to carry? You know, what may be sort of fixed in place, but maybe undermining your sense of worth and value at this point. So the Gemini new moon arrives in this house of your chart as fresh air. There's lightness that follows releasing what belonged to an earlier self. The moon in Gemini says to you, Taurus, what makes you most curious about what you value now? If you have Gemini rising, this is your moon and it lands in your first house. This is the house of self, your presence, who you are and who you're becoming. It's how you present yourself. And so this is where the curiosity opens up and where the questions arrive. And so your strength, of course, is in the way you bridge things, you know, the way you translate and communicate and how you hold more than one truth at once and make it look like easy, you know, like dancing. But the shadow is the temptation to assemble yourself from reflections, to become so fluent in all the viewpoints and perspectives and information that sometimes you become that. So Lilith stands directly opposite you right now in the sign of the truth and the freedom that that truth brings, and the untamed wildness that Lilith brings. So she's holding that question open with you. And the question opens here in the territory of identity itself. So the question opens as to, who am I? How do I become more of myself when I deepen into the heat and the aliveness that Lilith brings and move from the surface into that deeper territory, and not just into, but out into the greater horizon. So the moon asks you right now, Gemini, when nothing needs translating and no room needs reading, who are you then? If you have Cancer rising, this new moon lands back in your 12th house. This is the deep interior, it's solitude, and it's sort of backstage. It's when we are semi-asleep and dreaming, or even asleep and dreaming. That's the 12th house. It's sort of that house of the non-witnessed part of our life, and where we regenerate behind the scenes. So Cancer, you're so good at attunement, emotional attunement. You feel the room, you feel the tide, the unspoken feelings and energies, and you hold others with a fidelity that few can match. You're devoted and tending. But your shadow, everyone has a shadow, and where this can arrive in your 12th house is that your inner waters might carry only what you hold for everyone else. So an interior without a pool, if you will, that's purely just for you, for your own nurturance and nourishment. So the question opens here in the deepest privacy, in solitude, in dream, in the hour that no one sees. Again, the unwitnessed self. And this may bloom as a dream that answers what waking thought can't, and as a knowing that surfaces slowly and asks you to stay secret for a while longer, so keeping your own confidence through your process. So the moon asks you, Cancer, what knowing waits in your own waters, in your inner life, and in your dreams that you keep for no one else? What nourishes you in your unwitnessed inner sanctuary? If you have Leo rising, the moon lands in your 11th house. This is community, the people you co-create with, visions, the wider circles that you're a part of, and the people who share your frequency. And your strength is radiance. You bring warmth into a room, and people gather around it. Now, Venus has just crossed into your sign, so your magnetism is at full strength. And the bloom may come from how you turn your magnetism outward. But in the 11th house, the questions may open up around your role in the community. And sometimes questions come out of our shadow and the way that we are, the things that we don't see, that are in mystery about ourselves when we interact with our communities, and the ways that those things come out, and the questions that arise from our interactions with the larger group. In Leo, you like to be seen. You are fed by the response to your light. And so this new moon is bringing questions about how you exist in community, and how you are also recognizing that same light in others and inspiring that through you being your brightest self. So the moon asks you, Leo, of all the fires gathered around yours, which ones are asking to be known more deeply? If you have Virgo rising, the new moon lands in your 10th house. This is vocation. This is public life. This is the way that you appear in society and in the world, and your reputation and calling. So your strength, one of them, is discernment. You see what's there, and your care makes things work. You are someone who pays attention to detail, and you are devoted. And the shadow may be the temptation to keep perfecting that work, and to perfect the work some more. And this is work you already know, and these are patterns that you already, are well worn, and not asking whether this is still the work. Sometimes craft can be a way of postponing the calling. So the question opens here at the most visible point of your chart. What wants to be built next? This is what the work is becoming, where your mastery is ready for new territory. So the moon wants to know if you can loosen your grip, and she asks you, if the work were allowed to change, what would it become? If the work were to change, what would it become? If you have Libra rising, the new moon lands in your 9th house. And this is belief, philosophy, the far horizon, and what expands your sense of what's possible. And your strength is perspective. You see every side, and your fairness is a form of wisdom, right? So you can put yourself in other people's shoes with ease, and you're always thinking about or feeling into how other people might feel. The shadow is, holding all the frameworks in such a graceful balance that you never plant your flag in any of them. So holding your truth and your belief that you feel and know in your own body, again, informed by Lilith with this new moon, and staying with it, becoming settled with it. This doesn't mean that you become totally ossified in your beliefs, but that you have a viewpoint and you're willing to claim that polarity, that truth and that charge, and that's going to give you more freedom and movement. So the question opens here at the horizon, what you actually believe, where the far country is calling, what truth you are ready to claim out loud. So the moon asks you, of everything you have weighed so carefully, what do you yourself believe? If you have Scorpio rising, the new moon lands in your 8th house, and that's your natural habitat. This is intimacy, shared resources, the depths of exchange, power, and what transforms when two people really connect. Your strength is that depth. You go where others fear to tread, and you don't shy away from transformation and from mystery. You're comfortable there and intrigued by it, and that's sort of what you're attracted to. The shadow can be that you map the depths of others while keeping your own gates quite guarded. So intimacy as territory you study rather than water that you enter. So keeping your cards close to the chest and not being seen yourself, which isn't really intimacy, is it? Not really. So the question opens here in the shared dark. What you are ready to disclose, what entanglement is ready for fresh eyes, where your own gate might open first, where you might have the courage, and you have plenty of courage, to speak your truth first to someone who's earned it. The question can open in terms of merging resources and negotiating resources. Is it time for some kind of renegotiation around that? And this blooms in the freedom that follows from being seen and staying with that being seen. So the Gemini moon asks you, Scorpio, what would it mean to be the one who is known instead of the one who knows? If you have Sagittarius Rising, the new moon happens in your 7th house. This is the mirror. This is partnership. This is the one who's at the, across the table from you and who mirrors some aspect of yourself back to you. It's the house of the other and of marriage and just partnership in general. So your strength is truth, and you aim for what is real, and you say it, and your fire makes others braver, right? So when you feel a truth, you want to share it, you want to say it, and it's out there. So the shadow is the temptation to treat the other as a waypoint on the journey rather than a country of their own. And also in how you deliver truth. Sometimes you can deliver a truth and not stay for what the result of what it, is like to receive that truth might be. Sometimes you love, in a way that keeps an eye on the horizon. And so Lilith stands in your sign, and she's in your house of self right now. And she says the wild truth this time may be that you want to be met and to meet the other fully and to stay. So the question opens here in the meeting: what partnership is becoming, what you actually want in the one across from you, and what staying might make possible that leaving can't. So of course, here we're speaking about that kind of restlessness that you have and that resistance that you might have sometimes to settling, not necessarily about situations where we have used our discernment and it is time to leave. So I just want to make sure that we're clear about that. And with that in mind, the moon asks you, what might staying make possible that no horizon ever has? If you have Capricorn Rising, the new moon lands in your 6th house, and this is your daily life, your body, your diet, your day job, the rhythms and work that form the texture of your days. And your strength, one of them, is endurance. You build for the long term, and your discipline is a form of devotion. You are aligned with the seasons, and the seasons are aligned with the traditions, and you thrive in tradition and in what is known as tried and true. So the shadow is the temptation to let the days serve the decades, the body and the daily round maintained as infrastructure for the plan, but not necessarily actually inhabited. Do you feel the difference there? Really being embodied and being in the moment instead of what you are building, right? So the question opens here in what is ordinary, what the days feel like if they were the point, where the body is asking for new rhythm. Which recurring weight is ready to be set down? So again, just moving out of those, your ruling planet is Saturn, so moving out of habits that have been ossified and have gotten kind of cranky and creaky, and moving into something new and being curious about what that might mean. So the moon asks you, Capricorn, if this Tuesday were the point of everything you're building, how would you live it? If you have Aquarius Rising, the new moon lands in your 5th house. This is creativity, pleasure, desire, risk-taking, your inner child, and what you make that is yours creatively, that comes from your personal heart and your personal creativity. Now, your strength, Aquarius, is vision, progressive vision, and vision for the future. So you see the pattern beyond the present. And your originality opens doors that didn't exist before. So you innovate and you reinvent, and you can see what could happen in the best of all worlds for the collective. Now, the shadow here is the temptation to route every desire through that collective and through the collective vision, right? So asking what the work is for, who it serves, where it fits. Delight at its center leaves because it doesn't serve something that we're activisting toward. And there's that question that is often asked by many people in my orbit anyway, right now. Well, with the world the way it is, how can I justify making my art? These personal concerns, they seem so trivial compared to fill in the blank about what's going on in the world. My answer to that is art is resistance, and our allegiance to our creative capacity and our play and our enjoyment is resistance and is contributing to the collective good. So the question here opens in the territory of delight, what you want purely for the wanting, what you would make with no audience and no vision to, work toward, where play has gone missing. So the moon asks you right now, Aquarius, what would you create and what would you enjoy if it were for no one, not even the future, just for delight? If you have Pisces rising, this new moon in Gemini will happen in your 4th house. This is home, the root, the private interior of your life, your home life, your family life, and it's the foundation beneath everything that is in your life. So your strength is your permeability. You feel the whole energy field. And your compassion makes you a harbor for others. You're also often very funny because you do feel everything and you turn it into humor. A lot of comedians are Pisces. One of the shadow sides of Pisces, and we all have a shadow side, is lacking rootedness, drift. And flow is your strength, but drift can be your undoing. And losing yourself or martyring yourself for something that isn't really rooted in your own true value system, right? And isn't really connected to what feeds your strength. So the moon in Gemini asks you, Pisces, what shape would your home and family life take if it were built to truly hold you? Happy new moon in Gemini, my friends. Take care until next time.